Welcome back to Teacher Jeff 40K. Today, I'd like to talk about two of the flyers in the Space Marine Codex. I'd like to compare the two because they're very, very similar in terms of point cost, and they actually do come from the same box set. And I'm trying to figure out which one's better than the other. I think I've figured out the answer, but I'm not sure. And at the end of the day, I think that I've figured out that both of them are, I'm not going to say not worth taking, but a lot of other things that I want to put into a list are going to compete with this, with both of these flyers. I'm talking about the Storm Raven. Sorry, not the Storm Raven. That's actually the only flyer I'm not talking about. I'm talking about the Stormtalon and the Stormhawk, the two smaller ones. So here I have my Stormtalon. This guy's a guy I've had for a little while now. So I have him equipped with some missiles and the twin assault cannon, which actually you can't change out. But also what I've done is I added a little las cannon piece here. It's kind of a cheap way of doing this, but I have sort of a detachable las cannon here that I want to use so that I can count this as a Stormhawk as well, should I want to. Because I bought this, actually, the Stormtalon, back when it was only the Stormtalon that came in the box, and now the box that they've released is the Stormtalon and the Stormhawk in one box. You can't build both. But you have the different weapon options to build one or the other. Anyhow, I got this guy back in 7th edition, and he was okay. He did some good jobs there back when it was harder to hit flyers. And now I haven't quite seen... I haven't really found the spot to fit him in, the Stormtalon, that is. So first off, I'd like to compare the two and see where, one of them wins, if either of them do. And then, just sort of go over some general use stuff for these two flyers. So firstly, the Stormtalon, which is the one I have modeled here. So let's pretend that las cannon is not there. Or it's supposed to be a las Talon or whatever it is. Anyhow, let's pretend that's not there. This guy, the Stormtalon. The Stormtalon it's all right. It moves really fast. It has a maximum range of 50 if it's in fly mode, so 50 inches, which is quite good. It's got 3 up armor save, 10 wounds, and it's got toughness 6, which is one of the things I don't like about this guy. And unfortunately, at 10 wounds, he just fits into that window of vehicles, monsters, characters, whatever, that degrade in profiles because he has so many wounds. I think the cutoff is 9, so anything with 9 wounds has no degradation whatsoever, and anything beyond that does degrade. So it's a little disappointing that he's just on the cusp of that. There are a few options, weapon options, and they can be quite good. So the one weapon option you do not have is that you must take a twin assault cannon. But that's really not a big deal because the twin assault cannon is great. There's nothing wrong with it. It's heavy, 12, strength 6, minus 1 AP, 24 inches. And the shortish range for this is really not a problem because it's a flyer and it can get around. So it's good that, it's not good that you can't choose to change it out, but it's a good weapon to have to not be able to change just because it's great all around anyways. And then it comes stock equipped with 2 heavy bolters, which is kind of underwhelming. But you can replace those heavy bolters with 2 las cannons, a Skyhammer missile launcher, or a Typhoon missile launcher. So 2 las cannons, enough said, explained. Typhoon missile launcher is basically 2 regular missile launchers. You just get 2 shots, so you can choose 2 crack grenades for anti-tank or 2 frag grenades for anti-infantry. It's a little expensive at 50 points, but it's the same cost as 2 missile launchers, so I guess that makes sense. The Skyhammer missile launcher is kind of interesting. This one is specific to the Stormtalon and the Stormhawk. So they're the only two that have access to this weapon. And it's kind of cool. So it's 60-inch range, heavy 3, strength 7, AP -1, and D3 damage. So it's very, very good at dealing with flyers, and particularly because it does have another ability. It's add 1 to the hit rolls made for this weapon against targets that can fly. Subtract 1 for the hit rolls made for this weapon against all other targets. So it's good and bad. I mean, it's clear that it's specific for targeting flyers. And then the Stormtalon itself has a special ability called Strafing Run, which is add 1 to the hit rolls for this model when targeting an enemy in the shooting phase that cannot fly. So the Stormtalon, this guy, is a ground attack vehicle. So it's meant to strafe across the battlefield and hit things on the ground, basically. So it does get that +1, which is really good, which negates, if you are moving, it negates the -1 for moving and firing heavy weapons, because every one of its weapons options is heavy. So that kind of cancels itself out. It's pretty cool. That's a neat little thing to have. And then that kind of is interesting when combined with the Skyhammer missile launcher, which is that one that adds 1 to hit against flyers, because it means that it does also negate -1 for hitting flyers if you choose to equip it with that weapon. So it can become a sort of best of both worlds model, which is kind of what's in its favor, is that you can get something that's good for hitting flyers, and then you can get, you have the twin assault cannon, which is great for strafing the ground, maybe hitting some troops or something like that. And you can always equip it differently to give it, like, say, las cannons for tank hunting, missile launchers for sort of general purpose, or you can give it the heavy bolters to make it cheap and, like, you know, I guess extra shots at dealing with infantry, which is not a bad call. The only problem is you're kind of paying a lot of points for the vehicle chassis itself. So the base cost of the Stormtalon, I believe, is 110. Yeah, so it's 110 points. And because Chapter approved up the point cost of twin assault cannons, that's a plus 44 points base before you even add the second weapon. So it's 154 points before you add the second weapon system. The heavy bolter is definitely the cheapest. So that would run you, what, 154, 64, 71 points. 171 points, which is, it's not bad, but it's still a little pricey. And you get a twin assault cannon and a heavy bolter. So, or 2 heavy bolters, rather. So actually, no, excuse me. I made a mistake. I meant to say 2 heavy bolters. So it's not a twin heavy bolter. The twin heavy bolter is 17 points, but heavy bolters are 10 points apiece. So what did I say, 171? So it comes out to 174. Still not bad. So a nice, almost rounded 175 points, almost, which is good because it's a lot of shots at dealing with infantry. That's 18 shots with all of them -1. All of them easily capable of getting into range, and you sort of negate the moving and shooting heavy weapons by having the strafing run ability. So it's pretty good. But otherwise, like, the other weapons are just so expensive that it makes the already expensive chassis and the kind of weak overall vehicle kind of like it. I'm not a massive fan of this thing. You are going to get -1 to hit it because it is flying. Your opponent, rather, is going to get that. So that's good, but I don't know. So the Stormtalon overall, it's okay. It can do some damage. It's fragile, though. It's quite fragile, because toughness 6 is not a heck of a lot. Anything like dedicated to dealing with heavy infantry and up, so like monstrous creatures and vehicles, is going to rub this thing out hardcore. So that's kind of why, in terms of survivability, I prefer the Stormhawk Interceptor. So the Stormhawk is the second vehicle type. So it's not this one here. If you've seen the model, it has sort of a covered pilot's cockpit. There's sort of like an armor plating with a slit to see through, and it's sort of shaped differently. It's got a slightly wider wingspan. So the Stormhawk Interceptor is cheaper in base cost. It's only 85 points base as opposed to the 110 of the Stormtalon. But it does have 3 weapon systems on it, which means it will probably, depending on how you equip it, in the long run be more expensive. That being said, though, it does have 2 neat little things that make it more survivable. One, simply put, toughness 7. It's just got 1 more toughness, so it's just harder to wound. Already quite good. And 2, it's got something in its special abilities section called Infernum Halo Launcher. You can re-roll save rolls of 1 for this model. Cool. A neat little way to survive even a little longer. So that's quite good. It's got the rest of the stats are the same as the Stormtalon. So it's got 10 wounds. It does have that depreciating profile, 3+ save, ballistic skill 3+, 3 attacks, if that means anything in the close combat, weapon skill 6+. It does move slightly faster. So it's worth noting that instead of only moving 50 inches, you can now move 60. So if you want to do that, you can. I've never moved at maximum speed with any of these planes before, never. But the option's there. You've always got it. Maybe you've got it in some apocalypse game where you're like stacking 3 tables together or something. Who knows? Yeah, it moves very fast. So it's more survivable. It moves faster. And like I said, it has 3 weapon systems. So it is equipped with 2 assault cannons, which is interesting. So it's not equipped with a twin assault cannon. It's equipped with 2 assault cannons. So anyways, the differences there are minuscule and not worth mentioning. So it's got I'm going to say it virtually has the same weapon. There are some little nuances there, but I don't feel like wasting my time or anybody else's. It's got a twin assault cannon, effectively. And then it's equipped stock or basic with 2 heavy bolters, same thing, but also an Icarus storm cannon. So it does have 3 weapon systems as opposed to the 2. And then the assault cannons cannot be replaced by anything. Same thing as the Stormtalon. It's always going to have 12 strength 6 AP -1 shots. The twin heavy bolters can be replaced by a Skyhammer missile launcher or a Typhoon missile launcher. So the same 2 missile launcher options as the Stormtalon, the one that's more anti-aircraft, the Skyhammer, and then the Typhoon missile launcher, which is that general purpose one. Basically 2 missile launchers strapped together. And then the Icarus storm cannon, so I'll get into that. It's 48-inch range, heavy 3, strength 7, AP -1, 2 damage, and add 1 for this if it targets fly, and subtract 1 for all other targets. So it's got the same ability as the Skyhammer missile launcher. It is specific for targeting flyers. So the Stormhawk has 2 weapon options to specifically target flyers, but it has also got its special ability, which is add 1 to hits rolls when targeting enemies in the shooting phase that can fly. So it's the opposite of the Stormtalon's ability. When the Stormtalon gets +1 against things that can't fly, the Stormhawk gets +1 against things that can fly. And worth noting, in this edition, it's anything that has the fly keyword. So not simply flyers, but jump pack infantry, Tau battle suits, hover tanks, anything that's got fly in its rules, this thing hits it better. So it's a little more versatile than I'd say it used to be, just because so many things do have fly now. But I would say the one way that the Stormtalon, so the other guy, the ground targeting guy, the one spot where he wins out is that there are more targets that he can hit better. Whereas the Stormhawk Interceptor is pretty much designed to hit flyers. So that means that if the Stormhawk Interceptor moves, its special rule negates the -1 to hit for moving and shooting with heavy weapons if it targets flying things. And then, if it is equipped with these two weapons that also add the +1 to hit against fly, it hits on a 2+, which is very good. But, that being said, if you target something that's not flying, you're hitting on a 4 instead. So keep that in mind. That's why I'm hesitant to take a Stormhawk Interceptor, because it's specifically for flying things. Now, he can be equipped otherwise. The only problem is he's still going to be getting that -1 to hit if you move and shoot with heavy weapons and you target ground targets. That's the only issue. But he is really devastating against flyers. So there is that. And also, I forgot to mention this. So the Icarus Storm Cannon, which is the heavy 3 flyer damager at strength 7, -1 AP, 2 damage. That thing can be swapped out for something called a Las Talon, which is effectively a las cannon with 2 shots, but it's half the range of a las cannon, so 24 inches. So 2 shots, strength 9, AP -3, D6 damage. And that half range is really not a big deal because you can move 60 goddamn inches. So don't worry. Oh no, it's short range. No, you're fine. Just move, go wherever you want with this thing. So that's kind of cool. It has some neat weapon options, which is very, very cool. And it does have that added resilience of the toughness 7 and the Infernum Halo launchers, which gives you that reroll of 1s for your saving throws. So it's not bad. The only problem is when you add all those weapons together, it does get mighty pricey. So there's the 85-point price tag for the chassis itself, and then say like the Las Talon, I believe is 40 points or something. And that's for the Las Talon alone. Yeah, the Las Talon's 40 points. The Icarus Storm Cannon's pretty cheap, 17. But still, you're still adding 2 assault cannons, and that's 2 separate assault cannons. I think they're 22 points a piece now. And at least 2 heavy bolters. So those 2 heavy bolters can be swapped out for significantly more expensive weapons. Skyhammer is 24, I think. Yeah, 24 points, and then the Typhoon is 50. So this guy can end up costing you about 200 points. As I said, he is more survivable, so that's pretty good. But both of these, I find myself struggling, like I said at the beginning of this video, I find myself struggling to fit it into a list. Maybe if I know I'm going up against a certain opponent who has a lot of things that fly, maybe I'll take the Stormhawk or something, but otherwise, like that anti-flyer thing is just it's a little too specialized. Like it's not too bad. Like I said, this is not just flyers, it's anything that has the fly keyword, so there's quite a bit. But I mean, you could go up against a ton of armies and just have nothing that has fly, and you've got a 200-point shooter that hits pretty badly. And depending on how you equip it and everything. So yeah, I do kind of like the 2 of them, the Stormtalon and the Stormhawk. They're both neat. They can throw out a bunch of damage in a variety of different ways. Having assault cannons is really good. They're very good weapons. And the -1 to hit, because they're flyers, does sort of help the resilience of both of them. One thing to note too, So the kit comes with two different missile designs, I guess. So I've added this one. I believe this is the Skyhammer missile launcher, and then there's another one with a bunch of like smaller missiles, and I think that's supposed to be the Typhoon missile launcher. But I mean, nobody really cares about that. So like, if you ended up equipping them, like, oh, you equipped them with the Skyhammer, but you want to use the Typhoon, no one's going to care. So they're pretty much the same thing. I doubt half the people, even the people who play Space Marines, don't know what these missiles look like. So as long as you tell your opponent beforehand, oh, I'm using these missiles, and you've obviously afforded yourself, you've given yourself the points for it in your list, then it should be fine. So don't if there, I'd be super surprised if this happened, but if some guy or some girl like came up to you and said, you know what, you're using the wrong missiles, this is ridiculous, you probably don't want to play with that person. But it's not going to happen. It's probably not going to happen. So I wouldn't worry about that too much. So that's kind of cool. So if you do end up, equipping one of these guys with either of the missile launcher variants, you can just kind of like change them on a whim while still being like, mostly WYSIWYG. It's still a missile launcher, right? I mean, it's pretty darn close. So I don't see why not. And otherwise, overall, I'd say they're both pretty good, but not that great. They're not like, they're not. I have other things that move quickly that I'd rather have in my list than these guys. That being said, I still do occasionally find myself including them, and they do some work before they are wrecked out of the sky. Like every time they get hit, it's because you dedicate anti-vehicle weapons to these things and they get murked. I haven't used the Stormhawk yet. It looks a little more resilient with that reroll saving throws and the toughness 7, but the Stormtalon does get rocked out of the sky. It's only got 10 wounds, which is not that much. So like a couple of bad las cannons and this thing's gone. But it's not bad. I mean, everything's susceptible to damage in this game. You can get bad rolls, good rolls here and there. That's not saying much of anything, but it is that there's a high probability that this thing's going to get rocked out of the sky. But hopefully you can dump out a whole bunch of shots before that happens. So overall, not a bad option, but not a fantastic one. Anyhow, if you have any thoughts on the Stormtalon or Stormhawk, and you think they're good, you think they're bad, you use them, you don't like using them, any modeling tips for anybody who maybe wants to save a little cash and maybe have access to both, or ways of magnetization, something, please let me know in the comments, and thanks for watching.